Good morning, and welcome to our series on patient-engaged RCA, engaging patients and families in root cause analyses of sentinel healthcare events. Today's presentation is about sudden and unexpected intraoperative death. This is our obligatory disclaimer slide. In essence, the video today presents a true patient story and a hypothetical RCA. We are not responsible for any decisions, interpretations, or conclusions you as a viewer decide to make from this. This is a team that you'll be hearing from today. My name is Tricia Pill, and I'm a pediatrician and medical director for quality and safety at Children's Community Pediatrics in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
My name is Robert J. Latino. I'm CEO of Reliability Center Incorporated in Hopewell, Virginia.
My name is Micalizzi, and I'm an advocate for pediatric patient safety and transparency in medicine. I'm the founder and director of Justin's Hope Project at the Task Force for Global Health.
I think what we're going to do now is we're going to switch to the timeline, a detailed description from Dale. Dale, can you take it from here, please?
On January 15, 2001, Justin was diagnosed with a Staph aureus infection of his ankle joint after being sent home 3 times after being seen for ankle pain by various physicians. At 9 p.m., an incision and drainage was completed in the OR under general anesthesia. 9:20, we heard a code blue from the waiting room as Justin suffered a sudden cardiac arrest and pulmonary hemorrhage. A few minutes later, we hear another code after a second arrest. We wait alone for answers. At 10 p.m., Justin was transported emergently to the local pediatric intensive care unit. X-rays, brain scan were completed as we wait with clergy who advised that we call in our family to say goodbye to Justin. 7:45, the PICU physician and cardiologist advised that there is no hope. He can't take it anymore, they say. 7:55, Justin is removed from life support. We leave alone. 3 p.m., the coroner's office calls requesting our permission for a complete autopsy as something is very wrong. He advised us to contact an attorney. Our search for answers began that day, and we continue today to find the truth of what happened behind the closed doors of the OR. What we received from the physicians, the CEO, and their attorneys was silence. Many questions with no answers. We questioned orthopedists and anesthesiologists. They said that they had no idea what happened. We waited for the autopsy and filed a joint commission and hospital investigation with the Department of Health and met with the hospital CEO. No known cause of death was found. Silence began. Records were inaccurate and illegible. The discovery process showed that the orthopedic resident completed the surgery alone, and the anesthesiologist lied during testimony. Questions and need for accountability linger. The silence from the involved staff was deafening. My internet search began. The more anesthesiologists, orthopedists, infectious disease physicians that I asked, the more possibilities that I received. I needed to research and learn for myself what could have happened to Justin.
Thank you, Dale. I wanted to give a few basic understandings about root cause analysis that will describe what Tricia will be going over with in the thing we call the logic tree. Let's start with where does a failure come from? I call this slide the germination of a failure, and failure starts with deficient management systems or organizational systems. These types of systems are put in place in order for us to help us make better decisions. But sometimes they're not always as good as they can be, and they're not always as comprehensive as we'd like them. As a result of deficient systems, we feed poor information into individuals. So as individuals have to make decisions, they're relying on the comprehensiveness of these particular systems, these management systems, to make their decisions. When we're fed bad information, we make bad decisions. As a result of that, we go ahead and we take an action that triggers now a series of cause and effect relationships that will continue to escalate unless we break the chain. Unless we go ahead and check these cause and effect relationships, then eventually they're going to end up with some type of undesirable outcome. So for terminology's sake, we define these organizational systems as latent root causes. And we call them latent because that's truly what they are, is that they're always there, they're dormant, but in reality, they're really paper, that they can't hurt anybody by themselves. So that's where the human decision comes in, and we refer to those as human root causes. And this is simply a decision error. So as a result of us being the humans that we are, we take the information that we're fed, we make a well-intentioned decision normally, and as a result, we cause a series of observable cause and effect relationships to occur, and we'll call those the physical root causes. So just as a basic understanding, we take information that's fed to us from our systems, we make well-intentioned decisions on that bad information, and then we trigger a series of physical or observable consequences as a result of that decision. Now that's the failure from the bottom up. Now we go to the next slide, and we're going to talk about root cause analysis, where we're going to work it backwards. Now at this point, the failure has already occurred. So now we're essentially recreating it. Now the green box at the top is called the event, and we refer to this as the least acceptable consequence of an undesirable outcome. We refer to the line around the top two levels as the top box. Now this is the top box because both of these, the events and the modes, are going to be factual. We refer to the blue blocks as modes. The blue blocks cause the event to occur. And it's sort of like the purple line is like the tape around the crime scene. Everything in there is true. We just don't know why it's true. So we start with modes, and then we start saying, well, we know that this is there, it's a fact, but now we have to start asking ourselves, how could? Now this is a big jump from a tool like the 5 whys, because 5 whys insinuates that we want a person's opinion and a singular answer. But in this case, we want to broaden our understanding of how could this have occurred. And if you think about the answers to the question how could versus why, they're very different. So we want to ask how could, we're going to let the evidence determine what's true and what's not true, and we're going to continually follow down the path of what is true. And then we're going to start to uncover the physical roots, the human roots, and then the latent roots. Now the human roots, we are going to diverge from asking how could, and we are going to return to asking why. Because once we're at the human roots, we have to be in the minds between the ears, if you will, of people who are making a decision and try to understand their frame of mind at the time they were making the decision. So we want to understand, why did they think it was the right thing to do at the time that they were making that decision? This will uncover the systemic or the latent root causes. With this, I turn it over to Tricia. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob, for the overview. So now let's take a look at how we can apply these fundamental RCA principles to a healthcare event. We start at the top of the tree. What is the event that is prompting the investigation? In healthcare, this could be anything from a patient fall to a hospital-acquired infection to a needle stick injury. Today, we'll focus our RCA event on sudden and unexpected intraoperative death. From here, we start by asking how at each branch of the tree. How could a sudden and unexpected intraoperative cardiac arrest occur? As you might expect, there are multiple pathways that can lead to an adverse medical event, and you might think of this as a differential diagnosis exercise. Considering a few of the broadest modes first, an intraoperative cardiac arrest may occur as a result of an underlying and previously undetected cardiac anomaly, from inadequate oxygenation and ventilation of the patient, from an equipment malfunction, or from a medication error. This is by no means an exhaustive list, and we should also keep in mind that these modes are not mutually exclusive. That is, there may be multiple pathways at play in the pathway to an event. From any of these modes, we can drill down further, again by asking how. How, for example, might a patient not be adequately oxygenated or ventilated on the OR table? Well, the ET tube might not have been in the airway, or there might have been a mechanical failure with the ventilator or bypass machine. The patient might have had an underlying pneumonia or sepsis, or develop a pulmonary embolus. To fully harness the power of RCA, we don't limit ourselves to a singular pathway at this point. We consider the full range of possibilities up front. And later, we can use the data and evidence gathered from a variety of sources to rule in or out the likelihood of any of these modes.
Thank you, Tricia. Now we'll hear from Dale as she reads the letter that took her 10 years to write. Dale, would you please read your letter?
I wrote a letter to the physicians on September 11, 2011, and to the hospital CEO. I'll read it for you now. Dear anesthesiologists, orthopedic surgeons, and hospital CEO, you may remember our youngest son, Justin. He was 11 years old. You cared for him 10 years ago. He presented to you on January 15, 2001, for an incision and drainage of a septic ankle. We believe that the surgery was performed primarily by the orthopedic resident, during which time Justin experienced a series of cardiac arrests accompanied by a pulmonary hemorrhage from the endotracheal tube. He was transported to the PICU unit at another facility in grave condition and died that next morning after being removed from life support with no hope of survival. His brother and sister were asked by the chaplains to be present to say goodbye. With the help of a cardiothoracic surgeon, we retained an attorney to help us find answers. Litigation was chosen because the multiple attempts to speak with you honestly about the care that our son received was not taken seriously. The silence was deafening. Parents need more than a simple answer of "we have no idea what happened" when their child dies. The better option for all of you in the future may be to tell parents, "We have no idea what happened, but we will do everything in our power to find out for you." I have worked tirelessly for the past 10 years trying to promote pediatric patient safety and transparency in medicine. On this quest, I have had the pleasure of working with some of the most brilliant of national healthcare leaders and many anesthesiologists and surgeons. Because of these connections, I am allowed behind the scenes of healthcare that most parents or patients would never see. You see, they trust me. I received a call from one of these physicians recently, exactly 9 years, 9 months, and 4 days after our son Justin's death. He said that a colleague of one of yours stated that he couldn't live with himself any longer, knowing that I was still searching for the truth. He went on to say that all of you and your attorneys knew from the beginning that Justin was most likely overdosed on phenylephrine. He said that the physician had reached for the wrong medication in error and used it in overdose proportions. I shared this new information with all of the physicians that have helped me over the years. Learning from the event is very important to me. My child did not die in vain. Although this physician informant's information was troubling, it was also healing to me. You see, parents blame themselves when something happens to their child. It was our duty to keep him safe. But I could literally feel the burden of the unknown melting from my shoulders when I received that phone call. Even though I have yet to hear the rest of the story. Justin was our child, and I am grateful to the physicians who finally had the courage to tell me a bit of the truth. Forgiving you for withholding this information from me and my family has been difficult. I will never forget the events of that day or following. But I am getting closer to accepting the truth as an error or an accident that was poorly handled. I never believed that anyone meant to harm Justin. My hope would be that fear of litigation will not prompt you to repeat these poor choices if tragedy should strike another family in your care. Perhaps someday you will be able to share Justin's story with your students so they can learn from your mistakes and another child's life can be saved. Most sincerely, Dale Micalizzi.
Taking a break from RCA for a moment, let's talk about what we know about phenylephrine. Phenylephrine is an alpha-1 agonist vasopressor. In plain English, this means that phenylephrine is a drug that works by constricting blood vessels. Many of you have probably used phenylephrine over the counter as a nasal spray or oral decongestant. In the operating room setting, phenylephrine is given intravenously to raise blood pressure or to prolong the effects of local anesthesia. But despite its usefulness, phenylephrine also has its dangers. Phenylephrine is both a look-alike and a sound-alike drug to several other drugs, which increases the risk of it being accidentally mistaken for another drug or another drug being accidentally mistaken for it. This is an error that can and has resulted in significant patient harm and even death. In the picture above, can you tell which of these vials is phenylephrine? There have been reports of patients accidentally receiving phenylephrine instead of metoclopramide, for example, after a look-alike phenylephrine vial was misplaced in the metoclopramide bin. Phenylephrine has also been confused with the sound-alike drugs epinephrine and ephedrine. All three of these so-called vasopressor drugs work in similar ways in the body, but they come in different concentrations and require different dosing and preparations prior to patient administration. Here's the answer to the question. From left to right is pancuronium, phenylephrine, metoclopramide, and atropine, all medications typically stocked and used in the OR anesthesia setting. The biggest danger with phenylephrine in the hospital setting, and one that has been widely reported in the medical literature, is accidental overdosage of the concentrated formulation of phenylephrine. The concentrated formulation of phenylephrine, which is the only formulation currently available on the market, requires a double dilution technique prior to administration. Phenylephrine comes as a 1 milliliter vial containing 10 milligrams of the drug. The anesthesiologist must dilute this concentrated solution 100-fold in order to give the standard adult dose of about 100 micrograms, which is 1/10 of 1 milligram. A miscalculation or skip anywhere multi-step dilution process can have serious or fatal consequences for a patient, ranging from headache and blurred vision to severe hypertension, cardiac arrhythmias, bradycardia, and death. If you think this sounds confusing or a little scary, imagine being the anesthesiologist trying to do this in a busy operating room during surgery on a critically ill patient. And don't forget that your med cart is still full of look-alike and sound-alike medications to the super concentrated phenylephrine vial that you're hunting for. Let's return now to our RCA of a sudden and unexpected intraoperative death. As we mentioned before, we can drill further down any of these branches to identify root causes and opportunities for improvement. For example, how can an arrest occur as a result of a medication effect? The patient could have experienced an adverse reaction to the medication given. Malignant hyperthermia, succinylcholine hyperkalemia, or anaphylaxis are all scenarios that have been encountered in the operating room. Or there may have been an error in medication administration. The drug may have been given at the wrong time, or in the wrong dose, or by the wrong route, to the wrong patient, or been the wrong drug. Some of you will recognize the 5 rights of medication safety here and see how basic principles of patient safety can be integrated into RCA. Picking any of these boxes, we again ask, how could, in our RCA, how could the wrong drug have been given? It may have been a look-alike drug or a misplaced drug. How could the right drug, but the wrong dose, have been given? There may have been a dosing miscalculation, an error in the dilution process, or a mislabeled vial. Again, we keep asking how could at each level. As painful and painstaking as it can be to identify each of these failure modes, we recognize that performing a thorough RCA is the first step to making care safer. The failure modes identified through RCA guide us to improvement opportunities, and by cutting off the branches that supply that mode, we eliminate a pathway to harm or death. Enough of the metaphor with trees and cutting branches, you say. Show me how RCA can lead to safer care. So let's return to our earlier discussion of phenylephrine safety. We identified look-alike and sound-alike drugs to phenylephrine as high-risk situations for wrong drug administration, as well as errors in dilution, which can lead to a wrong dose. There are a number of changes that have been suggested and in a few cases already made to address these safety concerns. It's not enough to just tell nurses and physicians to be more careful. True quality improvement means designing a system that makes it easy for people to do things right and hard to do things wrong. The Veterans Health Administration recommends that epinephrine, phenylephrine, and other look-alike, sound-alike medications be stored in physically separate drawers and shelves in medication carts and automated dispensing cabinets. Vials can be color-coded to provide additional visual cues for differentiation. Eliminating concentrated solutions of phenylephrine from anesthesia carts will reduce the likelihood of overdosage, as will requiring use of pre-diluted vials or syringes of phenylephrine, such as the ones pictured above. Such measures have already been implemented with some success in reducing incidents of accidental potassium chloride and heparin overdose. And now a little bit about each of us, starting with myself, Tricia Pill. I am a practicing pediatrician and medical director for quality and safety for Children's Community Pediatrics, a large Western Pennsylvania primary pediatric and adolescent care network. I earned my undergraduate degree from Harvard, my medical degree from the University of Pennsylvania, and my pediatric residency at Children's Hospital of Pittsburgh. After a series of medical errors nearly killed me and my son at his birth in 2005, I've since dedicated my career to improving quality and safety in healthcare. I am ASQ Green Belt certified in Lean Six Sigma quality improvement and am a passionate advocate for engaging patients, families, and frontline healthcare providers in QI efforts and RCA investigations.
And my name is Bob Latino. I am CEO of Reliability Center Incorporated. We are a 40-year-old reliability engineering firm specializing in equipment, process, and human reliability. We train, consult, and provide technology solutions to root cause analysts and investigators around the world. Our sole focus and purpose is to promote proaction instead of reaction through our reliability principles.
My name is Dale Ann Micalizzi, and I'm an advocate for pediatric patient safety and transparency in medicine. My 11-year-old son, Justin, died following a simple incision and drainage of an infected ankle in 2001. I've worked tirelessly in search of answers about my son's death, giving rise to a quest to improve pediatric patient safety and transparency in healthcare. I'm the founder and director of Justin's Hope Project at the Task Force for Global Health. I've channeled my grief, exacerbated by the absence of disclosure and apology, into programs that advance safety and educate a new generation about the importance of caring for families in the aftermath of tragic errors and partnering with them to learn from the tragedy. My healthcare collaborations have created a unique opportunity to embrace partnerships and obtain positive results.
Thank you. And now I'm going to turn it back to Tricia as we wind up this presentation. Tricia?
Thanks, Bob. For additional information and resources about the topics we've discussed today, please see the links provided on this slide.
This video is dedicated to the memory of Justin Micalizzi.